Today on Twin Cam, we're back at home in the garage with Melody, and you'd think, now we've got the gearbox rebuilt, that it would be a simple case of putting the engine back on top, shoving it in the car, drive away, and everyone's happy. But naturally, because the engine's out of the car, it's not so simple. There are so many things that while the engine is out of the car, we might as well address. And below the blanket that is just about in shot at the bottom of the screen is the gearbox itself. That's just there for safekeeping, keeping it out of the way as it is. You may also notice the engine is just there. Now, we will be getting to the engine today, and that will be part of this video, but the first thing we need to look at is the engine bay. Now, obviously you notice that the car is on stands and very lopsided. That's not the issue for today's video, that's for the next video, I think. But I've cleaned up this engine bay really well. I thought I'd do it off camera because it's just boring watching me clean yet another thing on this channel. So I'll put a before shot and then an after shot. I think you'll agree, that's quite a lot better. The thing I'm most amazed about actually is how the hydrogas cans have come up. They've really shone up well. Well, relatively well anyway, considering they're 35 years old. The suspension needs doing, that's an issue, but not for while we've got the engine out. But yeah, the engine bay is much cleaner. It's actually in astonishingly good condition, and actually I'm a little bit annoyed now that the heater box and the brake servo panels have been sealed up in the way they have. I mean, it's better than them leaking onto the floors and rusting the floors out, but if they would have been done properly, the engine bay would be genuinely really presentable, show-worthy almost, because it really is that good under here. But, you know, it's one of those things. It's better for it to be functional and look bad than being non-functional and look good. So, that's alright, not the end of the world. I might deal with it at some point, but not for now. It's not worth the faff, because to do it right, you've actually got to take the dashboard out of the car. So, yeah, fair enough, I'm not doing that. But with the engine bay looking as it does, the only thing that we really need to address in here are the engine mounts. Now, on an A-Series Metro, there are 4 of them. 2 big donut-shaped ones over on the offside, and 2 little cube-shaped ones on the near side. And while the engine's out, we might as well change these, because the A-Series engine is a rough old unit, and you know, the rubber just deteriorates over time. Now, you can't get new engine mounts because it's an old car. Austin Rover haven't been in business for donkey's years, so I found some new old stock ones, because fortunately the parts are still everywhere, just maybe not brand new. So they'll be better than the ones that are in here, but they're still not brand new, should we say. They never had an engine on them, at least. So, these are all new old stock, as I said. They're the 2 cube ones. Again, genuine Austin Rover, obviously. Now, of course, over time, these are rubber, very hard rubber, but they are rubber, and rubber does deteriorate over time, but they will be better than the ones that are in the car. And I also have the donut-shaped one, again, genuine, and another one. I'm hoping these are all actually correct. I'm sure they are. So, yeah, let's put them on the car. Might as well start with the twisted one. That makes most sense. I've loosened these off already, because I did worry whether they were going to actually come off or not. So, with the nut on the back, we obviously have the bolt that goes through the mount itself, a little washer, and we also have this little mounting plate that it actually sits in. So we have to swap all that stuff over to the new one. As is totally typical, there isn't a washer here, so this has been out before, or it wasn't assembled correctly at the factory in the first place, which, let's be honest, is a possibility. For the rearmost of the donut style mounts, you can't actually get behind it to undo it, so you've got to take it off this mounting plate here. And these I haven't tried to undo. Jumping around in time here a little bit, but I couldn't actually change this engine mount on my own in the garage. Unfortunately, once I got the bracket off, I realised that a big bolt that's torqued up quite tightly and quite a small and light bracket on its own doesn't really work. So I needed to clamp this in a vise, and I don't have a vise at home, so very kindly my grandparents let me use their vise. So I took the old engine mount off and put the new one on. So this is that bracket with a nice new shiny engine mount on. So we should be able to now bolt this onto the car. So that's all well and good, but as you'll be able to see, I'm not sure how to change this front engine mount with the subframe in the car. With a spanner in the engine bay itself, there's no room to swing it, and through the bottom, the anti-roll bar gets in the way. Naturally, I'm not willing to remove either the subframe or anti-roll bar, so 3 out of 4 will have to do. After all, it's only a 40,000 mile car. With that out of the way, and me trying to ignore the half-assed job as best I can, I'm turning my attention to another half-assed job: the engine. 1275cc A+ engines of this era were all painted red, which is very cool. But as this is an A series, it's dressed itself in a nice coating of oil. This backside of the engine showcases that well, but with some scrubbing, it's a lot better. And because I can, we're going to paint it. Bright, isn't it? So while I have my own personal therapy session with a pot of paint beside me and a cassette playing a melody of Bruce Springsteen and Patty Griffin in the background, enjoy watching me accidentally paint bits of Melody's spark plugs. And though it's not perfect, I'm rather pleased with how this has come out. I wasn't aiming for perfection because the rest of it is so clearly aged, but the new paint just brightens everything up. I was a little worried while I was doing it that the leftover dirt was going to wreck the finish or that it was going to be too bright, but this is more than good enough. So our last job for today is going to be back on the car itself, and at this point my head was going mad trying to figure out which jobs were going to be in which video. So if this looks like an introduction, then that's because it is. So the subject of this one is going to be the exhaust, because again, while it's out, there's no better time to be changing things like the exhaust manifold, because standard Metro World has this as the joint inlet and exhaust manifold. The A-Series engine has a Siamese port cylinder head, so it only has 5 ports, 3 exhaust and 2 inlet. And on all but MG Metros, they use this single cast manifold, which it flows fine, but it's not the best. And with it all being one unit, if we're going to put a new exhaust on, we're also going to need to put a new inlet manifold on. But before we talk about that one, shove that back over there, I have this. This is a Maniflow Stage 2 LCB exhaust manifold, which looks ace. It's very cool, and these flow brilliantly. These are used by absolutely everyone. Yeah, these are fab, and I can't wait to see what it sounds like. So I've given this a little coat of VHT, because it'll look nicer in silver. So we have that as the manifold, and then for the exhaust itself, more Maniflow. You've all seen on Melvin, of course, I have a Maniflow exhaust, and I've chosen essentially the same system but for an A-Series Metro. So this is Maniflow 1 3/4 tip, twin box, so it'll be, you know, slightly raughty but not too loud, and it's got a cool stainless exhaust tip on it, so that'll look and sound brilliant. The A-Series engine is one of the best sounding 4-cylinder engines of all time, so there's no point in going to this work of doing the gearbox rebuild only to leave it sounding muted. I might as well bring out some of that character with things like an exhaust, and more character with the inlet manifold. Now, of course, we're not going to be putting this on today because we've got to get the engine back in the car to put this on, but the inlet manifold is just this from a standard MG Metro. It also has coolant takeoffs on the end, because the standard cast manifold has a kind of hot box that sits on the side of it to take some heat from the exhaust so that when it's cold it runs a bit nicer. But this has coolant flow-throughs, which I hopefully will be fitting. Now, I've already fitted the carburettor to this, And of course on the end, I've put a cone filter. Now this isn't a good one, it's a horrendously cheap, really badly made one, and the quality looks dreadful. But that's just to bring about the noise a bit. I'll go into this a bit more when we actually do the engine rebuild. Engine rebuild? Put the engine back in the car, but yeah, this is all just for noise because it's going to sound ace. So that's all sorted, the carb's already on that. But for today, let's get to taking the old exhaust off. Now let's go into hands-free mode and I'll actually show you what we're going to do. Now of course the engine is disconnected, so this part of the exhaust is fallen down. I've got the car jacked up on its side so we can get to this side of the car where the exhaust runs. Now I'm looking forward to changing the exhaust, not just for the sound, but because there's an issue with this. Of course, as I said, the engine is disconnected, so this is shaking about more than usual, but we have an issue with the exhaust at the moment. Because the rubber mountings have deteriorated to a point, this is the gear selector assembly, by the way, that would usually sit up there, but the engine is out, so. But what it does when you're driving is that the exhaust whacks against the side of the gear selector, and that's a really annoying noise. So when we change this, we have all new rubber mountings, so hopefully the exhaust will stay much more in its place so we don't get that. Barring the downpipe and manifold, the Metro's exhaust is in two sections, split where I'm unbolting this clamp, and it routes over the rear subframe, so I have to get this join undone. Naturally, it might as well have been welded, so I got the saw out, and with all the rubber mountings removed, this can go in the bin. And in its place, the shiny new back box can bring the tone up a little bit. As I mentioned, I have all new hardware, and with no engine in the car, lining everything up is dead easy. In fact, the trickiest bit was trying to line up the three downpipes correctly in the Y-piece. Hardly like breaking Enigma. So with a drain pipe hung to the bottom of my little car, there's only one thing left to do. It is in. That looks ace. I mean, it doesn't really matter how it looks under the bonnet, but yeah, we have that in. It's not all bolted up properly and fastened down properly yet because I want to put the engine in the car, get the manifold on the engine, and then I can actually tighten everything up properly. But the exhaust is in, it seems to be fitted properly, and I'm very, very happy with that. It's all gone together very easily, as I'd expect from Manaflow, to be honest, because they do stuff proper. So there we are. I wish I could show you how it sounds, but you're going to have to wait a little while until we actually get the car going. So on that note, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please do click like and subscribe to TwinCam as well. I'm forever indebted to my wonderful Patreon supporters, so if you'd like to support me that way, then please do follow the link in the description. And I'll have more videos coming along soon.